David, thank you for joining me.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so excited for our conversation. And I just shared in your bio all the interesting things that you've done in your life, just being a successful entrepreneur. But I know that you have some really specific things that you're passionate about in your life. So, do you mind just kind of sharing a little bit about your background, what's relevant, but also just like what lights you up right now? What are you super passionate about?
I love that question. Yeah. So, who was she talking to today? So, a short backstory. So, I grew up in Minnesota. I live in Nashville, Tennessee for the last 30 years. And I run my own company as I've been self employed over the last 7 years now, along with my brother in law at the time, developed an invention. It's a thermostat guard. We all know the thermostat wars, like everybody's messing around with it, whether that's in a restaurant or an office or your home for that matter.
Yeah.
We invented a thermostat guard called the Stat Guard Plus that has a combination lock as opposed to a key. So you don't have to worry about losing that tiny key. So we sell in Home Depot and Lowe's and True Value, and we're growing that business and so on. And my wife and I, we just celebrated our 25th anniversary, and we actually did a cruise to Alaska, which was really neat.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. And my son just finished his first year in college at Tennessee Tech. And my daughter is going into her senior year of high school.
This is an awesome time for you guys.
It really is.
Yeah.
I'm pretty excited to kind of go through this transition. I feel like we're really heading into this season of life strong. They kind of go through the empty nest thing, or they're anticipating it anyway. And there's a lot of anxiety, like who are we without the kids, that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
Lisa and I, we feel really missional about, of course, the things that we work on together. And we've kind of got our own stuff that we're doing. And yeah, just excited to see what this next chapter looks like.
Mm, that's awesome. Did you always want to be an entrepreneur, or was there like a particular need that you're, oh, I can serve this? How did you decide on your business or on the product that you guys created?
Growing up, I always was kind of gravitated to people that were not just business owners, right? There's a lot of people who might say they're entrepreneurs, but they just created a job for themselves, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But for me personally, there were a few people in my life that really stood out that had their hands in a few different things. And it was really fascinating to see kind of how they operated. Granted, they were working a lot. It's one of those things when you become your own boss, you can be your worst taskmaster, as it were. But I just was so drawn to that type of a personality. What kind of a person would have three businesses and own some real estate and do some coaching or various things? And so the answer is yes. I felt like I was always kind of attracted to that lifestyle, but I had no idea what my particular niche was. And about 10 years ago, it kind of presented itself as we came up with this Stat Guard. I was actually working for a large telecom chain doing facilities management for about 17 years. It was a great job, great career. I was there a long time. And of course, in our stores and call centers and things like that, we would use thermostat guards everywhere because nobody could keep their hands off the thermostat. So when we came up with this, I knew that we had something because nobody could keep track of that tiny key. I mean, it was a fascinating thing to have had that experience and then see this and experientially know we've got something.
Yeah.
So Lisa and I sunk our life savings into it and had the molds made for plastics injection molding and prototyping, and ordered a bunch of units and did everything wrong and had to figure it out to ship after that because, of course, we made that mistake of if you build it, they will come. And of course, that's not true. And just had to learn everything. What does it look like to manage your own time, to run a business, cash flow, P&Ls, and supply chain management, and all that stuff? I'll be honest, it's been hard. I think from the outside, people hear, oh, you've got a product in 3,700 retail stores. Nope. I mean, it sounds great. And yes, I'm so grateful, but it's been 10 years of blood, sweat, and tears. And I don't think any of us escapes a lot of challenges in life. And that's okay. That's what makes it a great story.
Yeah. How long after you started your business and started working on the product did you quit your job?
Let's see, I think it was 4 years. So we found some traction online and even homedepot.com and so on. It was more of a hobby on the outset, and then kind of took the leap after about 4 years.
Okay. And do you feel starting your business and your entrepreneurship journey then allowed you to continue on this evolution? Because you're actually writing a book now and you've got some other things that you're doing in addition to this product that you have created.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing. People often have such misconceptions about money, and I think we all do in some ways. But I heard somebody say one time, I think it was Dave Ramsey, he said, money is like air. Try living without it. And so what's fascinating is if you're thinking about paying your bills paycheck to paycheck and you're worried, I can't put gas in the car Friday because I don't get paid till the next Friday. And that absolutely shuts down everything else in life. You're not thinking about dreams and your why and helping other people, and you're in survival mode at that point. So I felt like when we crossed a little bit of a hurdle where I was able to have a bit more margin to kind of let the dust settle a little bit, and you start asking some deeper questions as to what am I really here for? If I could wave the magic wand, what is it that feels really significant to me in my purpose? I believe that purpose is everything. And those of us who have struggled with kind of finding that niche, it's debilitating. And I think most people that don't have a really, really clear sense of who they are and what their purpose is suffer with a lot of anxiety and depression and so on, because you just feel like, what the heck am I even getting up for? It's just this big, hard slog of survival as opposed to, I want to see my dent in the universe.
Yeah. I agree. And I know sometimes people find purpose really overwhelming. And so I talk about having it could be purpose with the small p, and you can start off like just dipping your toes in, experimenting what feels good, what feels aligned, can I get excited and passionate about? And then over time, I feel like more doors open and there's more that's revealed, and you can sort of step into something bigger. And when we hear stories of people that are successful, could feel like overnight for us, but then you hear their story and you see that it wasn't a straight line. It kind of went in all kinds of directions or things you couldn't explain. So, did you find, like, when you talk about purpose for you, were there a lot of purposes with little p's, or did you have like a big purpose right away where you're like, okay, this is really what my soul's here to do?
Yeah, so I'll be a bit vulnerable here. I really struggled early on in life with some misconceptions around all of that, whether it's what, why, how, who, identity, authenticity, all this kind of stuff. So for me, my journey was I need to have accomplishments in
Mm,
order to be somebody, or at least not be a nobody. But I
yeah.
was really looking for other people's, I guess, applause or validation, or at least not shame. I don't want to walk into a room and stand next to another group of men and just feel like a total loser. And so, what's really interesting though, and again, not that we don't need the applause, if, as it were, the love of others. We desperately do. That's the entire point of life is relationships and that beautiful give and take. So what's kind of neat, so about, I guess, 7 years ago almost, I met a guy in California. He's a clinical psychologist, Dr. Andy Garrett, and he and I now work really closely together. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions around purpose and identity and those types of things. And what's really fascinating is if you are asked the right questions, you can actually drill down on who you are and what your purpose is rather quickly. Again, some of that stuff and how it plays out as far as career choice and so on might take a bit more work, but we aren't what we do for a living. If I'm a welder, if I'm a doctor, it's not who I am. It's a context for expanding and displaying, as it were, being who I am. We often think that we're defined by the career and all that kind of thing. And so, what's fascinating is when I started to understand, okay, basic bedrock level, what is a who? What does authenticity mean? And we get the word authenticity from the word author. I didn't make me. And this is a bit, I think some people are kind of offended by this. I'll kind of pop some bubbles here, but we think in the land of the free and the home of the brave that we are completely autonomous creatures and that we get to, I'm the captain of my ship or whatever, and I get to do anything that I want. Well, there's some of that's kind of true. But here's the funny thing, I didn't choose my eye color. I didn't choose my taste buds. I didn't choose the color of my skin. I didn't choose my DNA. I didn't choose my personality. And how do we know that that is absolutely true, like gravity? Well, I don't know if you have any children or
I
whatnot, but
do.
okay, so those of us who have kids or siblings for that matter, they come out of the gate really hardwired.
Oh, for sure.
I've got,
Completely different, my two.
yeah, and it's just wonderful. I mean, Parker, my firstborn, he was just that little rascal that wanted to tear things up and run everywhere and so on. And Kate is, I mean, literally within just a matter of weeks, you can tell that their little spirit is so different.
Yeah.
And as they get into that 1 and 2 years old, everything from taste buds to what makes them cry to little aggressive behaviors or what makes them giggle and laugh, it's so beautifully different. And children are not thinking like we are about, I need to find identity and be authentic. They're just doing their deal until they get hurt, right? Until they get bullied or somebody says something mean or whatever that is. Life happens. Life slaps them in the face. And then they start to question everything. Am I good enough? All those deep questions, which even as I say that, it's kind of heartbreaking. But what's fascinating is when you identify the word identity, when you identify what God authored in you, meaning, okay, so what is authenticity? Well, it's comprised of your values. What are your core values? And I like to say, what does your core happen to value as a hierarchy of core values? Because if you and I did a core values assessment, they would be different if we prioritize those things.
Sure.
And what are your convictions? That means what is right and wrong. A value and a conviction are different. What's a virtue? It's different from the other two. A virtue is what is outward focused, right? What is kind of that dent that's unique to me that I want to have on people. And then I like to say, what is it that gives your goosebumps? I got that from a Nissan commercial, I think. But really, what is it? You use that phrase, what is it that lights you up? Well, what is it that breaks your heart? What is it that makes you furious? What is it that you're willing to live for, die for? The goosebump thing, I just love that because quite often what gives someone else goosebumps is not what gives you goosebumps. And Dr. Andy says, follow the clues. There's a lot of clues in order to follow, to really galvanize those things that you would answer if someone asked you the right questions. So, this idea of authenticity and identity and who we are, it's rather easy to discover. You can literally be asked the right questions, write these things down. But here's the wonderful thing that I get such a kick out of is kind of back to what I said earlier. We're made for friendship. We're made for relationship. We're made to be loved. But what is that? What does that really look like? Is it telling your kids, hey, Parker, nice shoes? Or what would it look like? I mentioned earlier, I'm really passionate about dads. What would it look like for me to raise my son in such a way? And I've done this is to, from an early age, hey, Parker, I saw yesterday when you had some conflict with your friend or whatever it was, how you handled that. You started to ask questions and you took a humble position. Humility is a chosen place from a position of strength. And I've often validated his character and said, I love what you said there. I love how you showed up. I love how you handled that. I could tell that came from a deep place in you. And it's that type of galvanization or expression or whatever it is that is really how to love somebody. It's not telling them you've got nice hair or something. I mean, that's fine. And those are good things. If you like somebody's hair, compliments are wonderful. But boy, I tell you what, if you really want to love somebody, you start to just galvanize and say something about their character and how they show up and the impact that they have when they say or do, or how about this? I'm a musician as well. When they say or do or sing or play
Yeah.
or paint or write. So if you see something, say something about those deeper, kind of under the hood type things.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how fast you can identify who you are, what your purpose is, and especially when you surround yourself with people who understand that same paradigm.
Yeah. It's so interesting because unfortunately, I feel like too often in school and even at home as parents, if we're pressed for time, we notice behaviors that we don't approve of, or we notice
Yeah.
behaviors that we want to correct. And it takes effort and it takes awareness and it takes being present to
Yeah.
acknowledge and to seek and to identify with your
Yeah.
children, but also with friends, with family, with your partner to say, hey, I see you. And when you did this, this was really amazing. Or I love this about your character. And I see this when you do this. It makes such a huge difference. And when people are able to do that, someone did that to me recently. I just started crying because it was just the
It's
most,
intimate.
it's so intimate and
Yeah.
it feels so amazing. So, is that the story behind the Guardians of Grit? Tell me more about your book and what the principles are that you're trying to teach or to share in that book.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you mind if I back up 1 second? I want to make
Yeah, please.
comment on something you said about like when you're raising kids and correcting them, like when they're
Yeah.
just acting like little twits. So here's something that I found that's really helpful is, I'll say it this way, I just think everything is identity. So, how do you not only lift someone up, right? Inspire means to breathe life into. How do you do that? But how, as a parent or a coach or a mentor or whatever, how do you correct somebody in a values based way? So, what I think is wonderful is, especially when I walk dads through the Guardian's blueprint, they get to, in a moment of maybe some stress with their son or daughter or whatever, they get to say, "Hey, I noticed that this afternoon when you were talking to your sister or whatever it was, that you were really harsh.
Mm.
You said some things that were pretty unkind, or Parker, I don't think that's you. That's not who you are. Is there something else going on?" You bring it back to what they have identified as who the best version of themselves is. They tell you, here is my true north. Here's the plumb line at which I base every other decision off of, right? C.S. Lewis says, if someone calls anything crooked, there has to be a straight edge somewhere. Otherwise, there's no such thing as crooked or straight. Well,
Right.
in our own lives, this idea of plumb line, and a lot of people say, well, my internal compass tells me this. Well, I get it, but a compass is reading the magnetic field around it. This idea of I'm going to get close, but it's not 100% true north. It's not a fixed point that you have identified, literally written down. This is who I am, what lights me up, the type of person I want to be, the type of impact I want to have, what gives me goosebumps, all that stuff. And what I think is wonderful is yes, you can encourage someone based on that plumb line that they've identified, but then you can also correct them, even a friend. If your friend is, even as an adult, just shows up in a way that is just like, holy smokes, dude, what's up? Sit down with your friend and say, man, last night when we were all hanging outside, you were saying and doing some things that just didn't seem to resonate with who I know who you are. The person that I know is X, Y, and Z. There must be something else going on where you feel kind of chaotic inside. Tell me about that.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about a wonderful way to disarm, to engage, to say, I'm not going anywhere. So, to answer your question about the Guardians of Grit, this is really exactly what we do. I'm doing a soft launch here soon. Basically, we just help dads, and anybody for that matter, galvanize who are you? What are your convictions? What are your values? What are your virtues? And Dr. Andy, of course, I use his curriculum. It's a master class in identity and authenticity. And it removes all of that noise and all the shoulds, and it ushers in with a sense of curiosity the coulds,
Hmm.
and just disarms just all the bull crap that we've been fed around this area. And then, so of course, once you've identified those things for yourself and you start to understand that, well, then it makes total sense to talk to your kids in such a way that's on that level, very practically, not woohoo nonsense, but it's, hey, dude, that was not kind. Like, even in the moment, and then smile and say, that's just not who you are. What's up? There's something else going on here. Let's you and I go take a walk. And you usher them back to themselves and not some arbitrary stamp on the wall that you want everybody to subscribe to, like an office credo or something.
How do they know though? How do you know that that's not who they are? How do you have the conversations with the kids, and at what age are you having these conversations as parents to say, what are your values or what does it sound like? Because I do that through
Yeah.
coaching, of course, with adults, and sometimes they even struggle
Yep.
to, as adults, to identify because they've never done this exercise. So you can imagine if you
Sure.
haven't done it and then you're parenting,
Yeah.
how do you have the conversation with your kids?
Well, I mean, the truth of the matter is, right, you cannot give away something you don't have. So you have to establish these things for yourself. And our kids, of course, they just see right through us. They don't care what we say. They are absolutely watching everything that we do.
That's right.
And so how do you do that? Well, here's what's fascinating is, of course, maturity level is, as a 9-year-old, there could be a spectrum of, some are a bit more, especially girls, they mature faster intellectually, that kind of thing. So I do believe, though, and even it was funny, Dr. Andy's got 2 little kids. And I remember, I think it was Avery, his daughter, he actually started doing a values vision board with her really early. I'm talking like 7, 8 years old. And again, in the English language, there's maybe 80 or something like that possible core values with some overlap. It depends, really, it depends what language you're in. And so when you start distilling those things down and you just ask the kids, and again, it's on their level, which one of these resonates with you? Well, again, that will morph some over time. But when you hit that probably 12, 13 years old, there is a lot that might never change.
Hmm.
I mean, it's amazing how early in life people establish their sense of what they believe is right and wrong and good and just and honest and kind and so on. And one thing I love about his assessment, for instance, is you get to choose your particular value. You get to define that value. And then you get to say, this is why it's important to me. So no one else, some talking head somewhere, is not telling you what you should think or believe. There's absolute freedom to say, this resonates with me. And again, this idea of following the clues. How do you know you've actually landed on that for yourself?
Yeah.
Well, I like to say it this way. How do you know you haven't? And what's interesting is when people don't know, and again, especially teenagers like 15, 16 and up, if you don't know who you are and you've not established those 6 or 7 kind of core beliefs around authenticity, you're going to feel imposter syndrome. You're going to be comparing yourself to other people. You're going to feel way more anxiety about life, probably social anxiety, especially
Yeah.
fatigue, just general fatigue, avoidance. You're going to be avoiding certain people, certain situations, because you just don't think you have what it takes. And it's just a vague understanding of, well, I guess I have to be nice and I shouldn't be a jerk. Just really lame way to view life. You're going to feel stuck, depression, overwhelm, all that kind of stuff. Well, how do you know you found it? And this is what I think is neat because there's freedom, by the way. Maybe once or twice every other year, you might want to go back and just assess those things. But what you found them for you because you feel genuine, you feel natural, you feel normal, you feel resilient, courageous, free. You feel like your best self is emerging and you're not looking to accomplishments and to other people solely to define you. And the alternative is exhausting.
It is exhausting. And I was just thinking as you were talking about this is if we were to do this work, if everyone did this work early on, part of school or at home, and really identified what are the values and what does it look like for me to live in integrity to my values. One,
Yeah.
I think people would be making different decisions on where to go to school, what they're
Sure.
studying, what they're actually doing.
Yeah.
Instead, we're focusing in on, well, society says this is what success looks like, or someone told me this is what I should do. And then they find themselves out of balance. They find themselves frustrated, burned out because you're not in alignment. And when I do the work, a lot of times with my clients, we say, what are your values? And are you living this way every day? Are your daily choices aligning to your values? And if they're not, that's when they have an epiphany and say, oh, this is why I feel the way I do. Think about what would it look like if everyone did this work when they were younger, were able to actually figure out, oh, this is what it means like for me to live in integrity and live within my value system. It could
Yeah.
change everything.
There's so many studies done on this. For instance,
Yeah.
I think it was Stanford. Dr. Garrett was actually telling me about a study that he actually references it in his curriculum, but I just can't remember who it was offhand. But they referenced a study where they went into a high school and they did a core values assessment with them. It's a Stanford study. I think it's called the 10-minute exercise.
Hmm.
So this was an inner city where the graduation rate was 30%.
Wow.
I know. I mean, it's like you just get chills even thinking
Yeah.
only 30% of the people graduated. Well, here's what's fascinating. In 1 year, based upon the 10-minute exercise, after identifying their values, they would spend just 10 minutes every morning writing about one of their values. Guess what? In 1 year, they tipped it on its head and they went to 70% graduation.
Wow.
There are some psychologists who would say we are our core values. That's kind of an interesting, again, probably a bit of an overstatement, but at the same
Yeah.
time, it would cause you to pause and to be like, wait a second. I talked to a guy the other day, by the way. He owns a company and they hired some company to come in and get everybody's values based. So the whole company is operating in their core values. I think it's an 8-week type of a course and thousands of dollars. So they go through this whole exercise. And I asked him, oh, well, fascinating. That's a heck of a deep dive. I said, what are your core values? Well, he could only name 3 out of the top 5. And I said, well, when's the last time you looked at them?
Yeah.
And starts looking around at his desk and he starts rifling through the file cabinet. And of course, he pulls out this folder that he hadn't looked at in 2 years.
Yeah.
So, what I think is really interesting is we have to understand our human condition at the same time. If I sleep, I forget. And every single day, well, I forget which Stoic it was, Seneca or somebody said, we should live every day as if it's its own life.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating concept because I don't remember what I was thinking 3 days ago. For me to try to think, I need to have this particular headspace a month from now, I mean, it's just completely irrelevant.
Right. It is.
So, one of the reasons that I'm kind of excited even more recently about the Guardians of Grit thing is that we're creating an online community because change, and I mean, everything from Alcoholics Anonymous to you name it, change happens in community,
Yeah.
period. You were never designed to live in a silo and live by yourself. We are to love and to be loved. And again, that's on different levels and looks different depending on your situation. But what's neat is, how do we know community is everything? Well, again, go back to parenting. Parents are so afraid that their kids are going to get caught up in the wrong crowd. And I'm talking an early age. We will go to absurd lengths to make sure that our kids get into the right schools. They don't hang out with the kids that look like they're troublemakers, all that kind of thing. We would so much and so quickly, you get it as a mama bear, right? We're
Mhm.
going to protect our kids, period. And I don't care ultimately what's going on over there. Like, my kid is the most absolute precious thing to me. And I'm going to do whatever it takes to make sure that they're safe and they have junk in, junk out. I want them to be surrounded by young people who are values based and good and kind and lifting each other up,
Yeah.
which is really hard to find, by the way. And so here's the weird thing, though: we don't intuit that for ourselves. We kind of slide into life in this survival mode kind of a deal. And I guess I'm going to work hard during the week and play hard on the weekends. And we start hanging out with people that are just drinking a lot of beer, and their chief end in life is to have fun.
Or to numb, forget, distract.
Yeah. But they're the most miserable people you will ever find.
Right.
And Dr. Andy calls them authentic exemplars. There's
Mm.
some people who, when they walk into the room, they're different. We've all had people like that in our lives. The room gets wiser, safer, stronger, better. Everybody just kind of, their spines straighten up. They're like,
Yeah.
man, royalty just walked into the room, and it might be your grandmother, by the way. Who knows, right? But there's something that is so generous about those souls. They're other centered. Why? Because they're full. The good king made them in a good way. And when they identify that stuff and remove that question mark, they get to splash everywhere. And it's wonderful just to be around people like that. But here's the funny thing: we become like those we spend the most time with,
Mhm.
period. And that, again, back to the parenting, we don't want our kids in with the wrong crowd, but we don't think about that for ourselves. We choose companies and social situations and friends, I mean, for who knows what reason. And it's really important to have really radical clarity on whose we are and who we are and the life that we want to build, and to start hanging out with people that are on that level,
Right.
because you will drift. That's all there is to it.
Yeah. What is your hope with this book?
Yeah, so I'm hoping to give a bunch of them away. I'm probably going to release an ebook here in the next, I don't know, 60 days or so. And then maybe by the end of the year, we'll finish the large one. I've never written a book on this level. I actually had a children's book published a few years ago,
Mm.
and working on another one of those just because I get a total kick out of that. My buddy Blake Brewer, he actually has a mission for fathers as well called the Legacy Letter, where dads write a legacy letter to their kids and present that to them. And I did that for my kids a couple of years ago. And I even had my dad make a keepsake box for it and presented it to them on Christmas morning. But he has a phrase, and he says, I'm on a mission to help 1 million dads write 1 million letters to their kids. And the first time I heard him say that, I got goosebumps. I mean, talk about the best thing in life. So I feel like I'm on a mission to help 1 million fathers introduce their children to themselves, so they can look at their son and say, hey, buddy, let me introduce you to yourself. You're made of awesome. And whatever you're into, I'm into. I'm going to get behind you like a hurricane. And we're going to make sure that if you stumble, and you will, I'm going to be there to help you. Whatever dream you've got, I'm going to help you get there.
Yeah.
And it's because dad has done that work for himself and he knows how to do it.
I love that. That is so good. I wish you continued success, and I really hope that everybody gets a chance to get that book. You also do some work with masterminds. So tell me a little bit more about your view from the top.
Yeah, so I joined ISI, Iron Sharpens Iron Mastermind. It's not mine. Aaron Walker started ISI about 10 years ago. I joined the group and it's just been life-changing. I'm hanging out with entrepreneurs who they don't think bigger, they think better. And there's a huge difference there. So the decisions that we help one another make in the council of many, there's wisdom. So we sit at the knights at the round table, as it were. We bounce everything from marriage to parenting to cash flow to
Yeah.
marketing. I had a call with a guy that's got connections in retail that I'm going to meet with for my thermostat guard. And I've got a call tomorrow morning with a guy who's having marriage problems in our group, and we're going to help him solve that and become a better husband, a better leader. So I facilitate two of those groups. So each group has 10, no more than 10 men in it. And I think ISI's got about 150 men from, I think it's 6 different countries. And it's been life changing. We can go from hero to zero real quick. We can be a bunch of ding dongs and goofing around. And at the same time, we can help each other cross the finish line in some areas that could have never, ever done on my own.
Yeah. Community is so important. And
Yeah.
I'm part of a mastermind and I love it. I love being part of it. And it's a different level of relationship when you are connected with people who are intentionally choosing to be in the same space.
Yeah.
And it doesn't happen by accident. There's something really magical and different about it. And I'm with you. I tell people community is so important. We're not meant to be doing this life alone. And I think that's the beauty of finding your people, finding your tribe and connecting with those. So
Yeah.
if people are interested in learning more or
Yeah.
working with you or getting a copy of the book, David, what is the best way for them to find you?
Yeah. So I would say go to guardiansofgrit.com, or my personal website is David. My last name is spelled ASK, like ask a question. It's actually pronounced ask. You can go to, davidask.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I ask everyone on the podcast a final question, which is what does it mean to you to live the width of your life?
So I'll be honest, I reached out to you because of the name of your podcast.
Mm,
So I'm going to get deep here for just a second. I was talking to a friend of mine who was, I'll just keep it kind of whatever, G rated here, was abused growing up.
mhm.
And she said that she went to a counselor one time, and the counselor noticed that she was just kind of hunched down, her shoulders were forward, and it's like she was physically apologizing for just being there.
Yeah.
In fact, her counselor said, it's like you're apologizing for breathing.
Mm,
And she said, do me a favor. She said, lay on the floor and put yourself in a position of how you feel right now. And it was basically the fetal position,
yeah.
like, don't hurt me. And then she said, and this is where your podcast really hit me, she said, now take up as much room as you can.
Yeah.
And she laid there and spread out her arms just wide as she can. And then she said, take up even more room. And she said, then it was like the fingers are expanding and her lungs were expanding. And she sat there and just wept
Hmm.
and wept and wept, because we are mind, body, and spirit.
Yeah.
And you cannot separate the one without the other on a very practical, maybe visceral level. If you walk into a room and just straighten up your spine and put your shoulders back a little bit, it informs your thinking. And so I think it's really important to take up as much space as you can, and don't apologize for the way that you've been created in such a beautiful, powerful way. It's my mission. If I'm going to get kind of a little touchy feely here, it's my mission. Yes, I want dads to introduce their children to themselves. But what's the undergirding there, really, right? It's
Mhm.
love. It's, I want you to know that I love you unconditionally, like a scary love. And I want you to love yourself
Mm.
and pass that around, pass God around. That's the whole point here. There's nothing else that matters. The rest of it is a context to experience that.
Yeah. Oh, it's such a beautiful answer. Thank you so much, David Ask, for joining me today. And
Pleasure.
can't wait for the book to come out.
Thank you.